What's going on, guys? We are back for some more format talk. This time we're talking about the grid. The grid starts today, actually. By the time this video comes out, I'll try and pop it out early in the morning. But we haven't really gone over exactly how the format works and how the groups are drawn, how the playoff bracket is drawn. So let's get into it. Let's just go. Simple as that. If you don't know what the grid is, well, the 10 Rlcs teams and the 6 rival series teams from Season 9 will participate. In the sake of Europe, Monaco disbanded, so whoever finished top in the first qualifier got the spot. So that's Team Singularity. That actually kind of worked out nicely because NA also starts this week, and we would have had to done a whole nother qualifier for that one spot, like if that would have happened. But it didn't, so we're good. Each week, one tournament will take place. The entire tournament is done in one day, 9 weeks in a row of tournaments. So this is how it'll be. So one day will be NA, one day will be Europe. I think they changed the day here or there on the week, maybe scheduling things or something like that. I'm not really sure why, but just check the calendar for that. Now, the other thing to note before we get into the format is that every single org has the opportunity to stream their games. Right now, there is no official stream for this, but all the orgs have, like a bunch of them have signed either community figures or casters to cast the games that they are in. So they will follow along with that team. For instance, like Oxygen, Johnny Boy is going to be doing that on his channel. But for version 1, I believe it's Lawler going to be doing it on the version 1 channel, I think. I'm not really sure. I think it's Lawler and Supersonic, I think, or Spaceman. I can't remember which. But go check it out. It's all in the article. Like, I'll link it below of like where all these streams will be for all of these teams. So no matter what, you will see this entire tournament, and you can follow along with whatever team you want because every single team is streaming this, to my knowledge. So definitely go check out their streams and support the orgs. And this is a fun way for the orgs to do it. There's $10,000 on the line as well, and points. Points are on the line. I didn't really talk about it in here, but basically the points, what they do. For now, we know that whoever comes in first will automatically get a spot in the major. So that is the first thing. Then do points help seeding and stuff like that? We'll talk about that in the future. But let's talk about the format. 4 groups of 4, double elimination. Now, 2 groups are linked on each side. So the lower bracket final is different. There is no rematch. Basically, it's an 8-team double elim, but we display it as 4 groups of 4 because it's a little bit easier to show when we're going to be talking about how the groups are drawn, and it's just a little bit easier to show on paper. But just so you know, like Group A and B would be linked. Basically, what that means is if you lose in the upper finals, you fall down to, like if you're in Group A upper final, you would basically fall down to the Group B lower final, and you would play whoever lost. The 2 losers would play each other from Group B. Whoever wins would play you to move on. So there can't be any rematches, which is fantastic. That's what we want. We want a lot of varied matchups and no rematches if we can help it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. 8 teams advance in this double elim bracket, and then 8 team, just 1 life, and that's it. Playoff bracket, nothing too crazy about that. So this is all going to be done in one day. Basically what that means is not a lot of games, 5 or 6 games total for a team to win it all. Just depends if they lose it all in the double elim portion of the bracket. So all in all, this stream, hopefully, if every org is, like keeping up the pace, which I think it's going to be very difficult for the admins to make sure everything's flowing correctly, should take 5 to 6 hours at most, probably like 5 hours. Points and prizes are awarded to teams. We talked about it. There's $10,000 on the line. That is for the top 4 spots. They're the only ones who make money. Everyone, though, gets points. And those points, which we're not really going to talk about here, the exact amount of points. It's basically like, I think it's 10, 30, then it just keeps going. It's not a big deal. But the points basically will, if you come in first after these 9 weeks, get that automatic major spot. That's the big deal. If you've already qualified for the major, it goes down to Rlcs X points. So number 2 in the grid doesn't automatically make it to the major. So keep that in mind. The reason why that is because we didn't want, like, if there's a lot of teams making a major, we didn't want it, like, trickling down to somewhere, like, in the middle. Where then it seems weird to do it off the grid instead of Rlcs X. So Rlcs X points will be more important, but the grid points can help seeding when you get to the major. So that's all that needs to be said there. Now, how do we draw these groups? There's 4 groups of 4. How do these groups come about? Well, you know me. I love randomization, and I think I'm not on my thing for some reason, and I don't know where it went, so I'm just going to click into it. So because they're playing 9 weeks in a row, we want to have varied matchups. We don't want it to be a perfect group every single time because, again, my argument always for that is the 15th or 16th seed, depending on how you do it, would always get kind of screwed in these group draws where they would play the number 1 seed. Then if they lose, they play an 8 or a 9 seed. And like very likely you lose that matchup and you really don't have a chance to come back from that. While other teams, they're playing lower seeds and all that stuff throughout the lower bracket. So we didn't want to have a team just be caught in that 15 or 16 seed and then have to do that every single week playing the same exact teams over and over again. So we wanted to vary it up a bit because, again, this is 9 weeks. It's a little bit more on the for fun side. Like, obviously, there's still importance here, but it's definitely more on the for fun side. So the way it works is for the first week, the committee will seed these teams. Pools 1 through 4 basically will be the top 4 seeds, then the next 4, then the next 4, then the next 4. These teams will be randomly drawn into their groups. So every group will have 1 team from each of these pools. Then after week 1, though, the seeding changes. It'll always be based on last week's grid. So if someone can get some momentum going, like in the grid, and make the semifinals, they will be one of those top 4 seeds. And then maybe their group's a little bit easier, and we'll see if they can ride that momentum week in and week out. And if you come in last in the grid, you'll be pulled down and last. Like, obviously, there's going to be 4 teams that tie for 13th. There's going to be 4 teams that tie for 9th. And then there's going to be 4 teams tied for 5th. So all those groups are very easy to have. Then, obviously, the top 4 from the winner down to whoever loses in the semis will be that other group. So that's pretty easy to look at. And then also, we don't have to worry about, like, how do you seed with these 13 seeds? Do we go to RLCS X points or all that? No. We'll just put them all in the same pool. We randomly draw, and we make our groups. Now, again, remember, groups A and B would be linked, and groups C and D would be linked as well for that lower bracket final. But this will be easier to see or whatever. So, there you go. Moving on to how the playoff bracket is drawn. Now, because we have random group seeds, well, it'd be kind of weird to just have a bracket be like, all right, the Group A winner will play the Group C lower bracket final winner. It's like it doesn't really work. So we will randomize that as well. So a random top bracket team will play a random lower bracket team. The only exception is there is no rematches allowed until the finals. Now, because these groups are not contained in their own, my monitor just went out on my third monitor. It goes out here or there, but looks like we're good. It's going to make the bracket a little bit weird because there can be a team from the upper bracket that plays both lower bracket teams that advance out of that 8-team group, basically. And that can happen twice on both sides with Groups A and B and Group C and D. So there is some nuance to that, which I will get into here. So it'll stay randomized as much as possible, but we'll get into it with my little handy-dandy bracket randomizer. And it is very white. I am going to invert the colors, and we'll see if that worked. Okay, I don't know why I made a new sheet, but I think that might be also the same command for a sheet, which I never knew. I guess F11. All right, so basically, so say we do chalk, right? And we just go through the upper bracket. And these names are old. I just did these names way, way back when I was thinking about this. G2 advances, they played Rogue. Energy advances, they played the Sonics, but both of them advanced. The Sonics and Rogue advanced. Pretty simple. Same on the other side. Space Station beat PK, but PK still advanced. Ghost beat Cloud9, but Cloud9 still advanced. So that one is pretty simple. You just completely randomize it. So you take a random top team. Say you get Space Station in that number 1 spot. The only thing you have to do is then you put Pittsburgh Knights in these lower bracket games. So they will get a random draw in 3 or 4. When Energy gets selected, they played the Sonics. They would get the other random draw in 3 or 4 as that bottom seed. Obviously, then G2 and Ghost would fall down here, and you do the opposite effect, where G2, they played Rogue, so you would just move Rogue up to the top half, and it would be a random matchup there. So again, that would be no rematch until the finals. Now it gets a little bit weird when, say, one upper team beat 2 lowers that advance, and we'll talk about that real quick. So in this case, we had G2 beating Chaos and Rogue. Chaos and Rogue both advanced, which means Energy didn't play any team that advanced. So the way we do this is you assign the team that beat both lower bracket teams that advanced to quarterfinal 1. You assign the team that beat none of those teams to quarterfinal number 2. So Energy would be on the same side of bracket as G2. Not in the same matchup, but they'd be on the same side. The 2 the two losers that played G2 that won to make it to the lower bracket would be randomized down here versus Space Station and Ghost. So that's Rogue and Chaos. In a quarterfinal 3 and 4, Space Station Ghost obviously down there as well, and they would be randomly drawn to whatever side that is. The only other team that is left is PK and C9 on this side. They would get randomly drawn into G2 and NRG. So basically, like for the top side, it would be kind of like, all right, for G2, they'd be the pseudo number one because they've beaten, or they had the hardest schedule, right? And NRG had the easiest schedule. So they'd be the kind of pseudo number 4. So that kind of works out for that. And obviously the lower bracket teams, they would all get randomized, so it doesn't really change too much. The only thing is, in this case, then obviously Cloud9 and PK would just have no chance to play Ghost or Space Station, like they're opposite in their bracket. That's the only thing that really changes there. They would just get launched over to the other side, which is not a huge deal, once again. Now, the last thing that can happen is 2 upper teams beat 2 lower bracket teams that advance. So both sides of the bracket, same thing happened. In this case, we do G2 and Space Station Gaming. This one's pretty simple. The 2 upper teams that did that, you just put them on opposite sides of the bracket. So G2 would go on the top, and that doesn't really matter. Like, you could randomly draw it. It really doesn't matter. But G2 on the top, Space Station on the bottom. Then you take the 2 teams that G2 beat, and you put them on the opposite side of the bracket. Like, I think this one's a little bit messed up. Oh, no, it's not. I'm sorry. Mirage is on the other side. So Mirage and PK would come over to G2 side because they lost to Space Station. Space Station would get Chaos and Rogue on that side, and those would be randomly drawn. So Energy would get a random matchup out of those 2, and same with Ghost Gaming would get a random matchup there. But Energy and Ghost would also be randomly drawn, so they don't have to necessarily be on the same side as... Energy doesn't have to be on the same side as G2 like last time because this happened on both sides. So we try and keep it as random as possible when we can. When some weird things happen, you have to assign teams into certain spots, but we still try and keep it as random as possible for the quarterfinals. So just keep that in mind. It's always going to be as random as we possibly can while trying to live up to the golden rule, basically, of no rematches until the finals. So that's like the rule that kind of controls everything for the playoff bracket. So this is how it's done. Just in case you want to know. Like, obviously on streams, they're just going to, show the bracket or show the groups or whatever. Hopefully we can get some, like, cool videos or something of group draws in the future. I'm not sure if that's possible, but that would be really neat. If we could get that conversation going on, like, a Monday, and then, people can talk about it all week, and then we can have those matches on Thursday and Friday. I think that'd be kind of neat to get people to do some predictions on the group draws and how that all works. The one main thing that you need to know for this is, like, say Group A. There will always be one team that advances and one team that is knocked out in last place. After that, the 2 in the middle can either go or not. It just depends. So just keep that in mind. And my freaky inverted avatar is really creepy up here in the corner. But yeah, so that's pretty much it for the grid, how the whole bracket, how all the groups work out. Like, I think it's going to be a lot of fun with it being a little bit more randomly drawn, because it'll allow teams to get different matchups every week. Sometimes you'll get matchup against the same teams. That's going to happen. But at the same point, then you get some rivalries going, stuff like that. But at least there'll be some random elements. Like, obviously, if you get assigned one team the next week, like if you guys were in the same exact spots, there would only be a 25% chance that you're playing the same exact team in of that first round, basically. So not a huge chance, and you don't expect it to happen time in and time again. So that's how the grid will be played out over these next 9 weeks. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hope you guys all enjoy. And until next time, later. Support the org, support the caster.